My guest at this time is the founder of adfreeshows.com. He's also going to be presenting Starrcast V July 29th to 31st in Nashville, Tennessee. It's Conrad Thompson. Conrad, welcome back to the Wrestling Inc. Daily.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me. It's always cool to catch up with you. I feel like we've been doing this a long time, and I get excited anytime I see your message come across, and tickled to be here, man.
Well, you know, my podcast with Eric and your podcast with Bruce, I think if you go back, launched within like 7 days of each other. So it is a very small world that we live in, Conrad.
Yes, it is, man. And we've been having fun this whole time. Lord bless us.
Yeah, well, we're going to keep the good times rolling here, I hope, today, man. This is very exciting news. I know that you're always very coy about bringing Starrcast back because it's a giant hassle. I shouldn't say hassle, a giant labor of love for you when Starrcast comes around. What made you decide now was the right time to do this, Conrad?
Well, a lot of things. You know, I kind of had the itch, I guess, to see if I could deliver something that I tried to deliver back, 3 years ago now, the roast of Ric Flair. We were all set to go in Las Vegas for Starrcast 2, which at the time was the very biggest one we'd ever done. And I thought, man, what a really cool event. And then, of course, Rick wound up hospitalized and it didn't work out. And I thought, you know what? He's no longer with WWE. He's available. I floated it past and the ball started rolling and it got a little bigger and a little bigger. And then I had to figure out, well, so when do we do it? And now AEW has their own fan fest with their deal with Turner. And I didn't really want to cannibalize one of their events. And I think a lot of WrestleCon and Michael Bakikio and all the folks at High Spot. So I didn't really want to jump in, and do something at WrestleMania. And of course, I love Tracy Myers and the WrestleCade folks. So I don't really want to do something Survivor Series. So, man, SummerSlam just represented an opportunity. Nashville is going to get a stadium show, the first one ever. And it's like 2 hours from my house. So as a lot of businesses come to be, you just look for opportunities and then you say, okay, what about this? And it doesn't hurt that I'm friendly with Jeff Jarrett, and I think he could be the freaking mayor of Nashville. So he knows everybody and everything. And one thing led to another. And now here I am, Nick, doing it again, talking to you about it.
So when I see that you're running WWE Weekend, I've been a part of or at every Starrcast, right, in some form or fashion.
Thank you.
And of course, yeah, it's a wonderful time. It's like Pro Wrestling Woodstock. With the previous ones, there was always like an AEW tie-in, and there was like AEW talent that would come and do panels and stuff like that. With you sharing space with WWE SummerSlam, are we going to see any WWE tie-ins like we used to see with the AEW stuff?
No, I mean, we were always sort of the unofficial fan fest, if you will, of AEW. We weren't technically, I mean, it's always been independent and it'll always be independent. And it just wound up, I just had a bunch of my friends over, and it turned out that a lot of my friends happened to work for AEW and they were willing and able to let some of their talent do it. So it just made sense. But Starrcast actually predates AEW. I mean, we piggybacked all in. I saw an opportunity with Cody and the Bucks running their first big mega show. And I thought, man, this is a cool opportunity. Somebody's going to do it. Why not partner with these guys and say, hey, let's do it together? And they loved the idea. So I kind of became an accidental promoter. But to answer your question, no, we're not a WWE co-opted thing. I know that a lot of people would say, oh, but I mean, what about WrestleCon? What about WrestleCade? Those things aren't necessarily affiliated with a company. We never have been. Certainly we had some talent, but I mean, as you recall, once upon a time, we promoted the Undertaker at Starrcast 2, and that didn't work out, but he was still technically doing stuff with WWE, as did Bruce at Starrcast 2. But no, those guys are going to have their hands full. They're going to be putting on one of, if not the biggest SummerSlam ever. And I think they're actually in Atlanta the night before. So no, there won't be a big WWE presence as far as the current roster. But as you and I are recording, I think it's been announced that we've got one of the biggest Hall of Famers and legends of all time who will be there. Mr. Bret Hart will be joining us to discuss SummerSlam 1992 on the darn near 30-year anniversary. It is the 30th anniversary of SummerSlam, but on a calendar, SummerSlam back then was in August, but you get the idea. I thought, man, what better way to really set off a SummerSlam weekend than talking about one of the most, if not the most famous SummerSlam match ever.
Well, that's great. And that's one of my follow-ups was like, how do you top what you do, Conrad? Right? Like there's like, is there like a bucket? Do you have like a private little bucket list you keep in your pocket of like 4 or 5 big ideas that nobody's really thought of yet, but are really going to blow some minds?
Well, I'm doing 3 of them this time. You know, the roast of Ric Flair, I think, has an opportunity to be much bigger than maybe just wrestling fans realize, because Ric's celebrity, it's beyond just wrestling. I mean, he's a pop culture figure at this point. If you just type in your Google machine Ric Flair rap song, there's probably 2 dozen rap songs just named Ric Flair. I can't tell you how many are referencing his lifestyle and his way of life back in the 80s and all that stuff. So he is we're going to have a mainstream turnout. We're going to have a lot of big time folks who are participating and taking a look, and it's going to be a big undertaking, the biggest I've ever been a part of for certain. But then I've always wanted to do something with Brett celebrating SummerSlam 92, because whenever Bruce and myself and JR, whenever we would go do our podcast tours overseas,
Right.
man, it came up every time. I mean, that was really their major pay-per-view. And so it is an iconic moment. It's like WrestleMania 6 to me. I mean, I just can't get enough of it. So I thought, you know what? This is the right time, the right place. And we're having our old pal, Kenny McIntosh, who someone said, hey, Kenny's kind of like the Conrad of the UK. I don't know what that even means, but I'm like, Kenny, dude, you got to do this. So Kenny was all on board. So glad to have him on stage. And we're going to have some other big surprises. But yeah, the big idea was, let's do like an almost one night stand for Jim Crockett Promotions.
Yes.
You know, I absolutely loved ECW. It was my favorite promotion as a kid or as a teenager. And when it went away with a whimper, you know, we didn't know it was the last one. It just happened in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and there wasn't any pomp and circumstance, and it just sort of went away. And so as soon as they announced tickets were on sale or what they were going to be, it was $1,000 for ringside, Nick. I remember that because I'm 23 years old thinking, can my buddies and I really swing $1,000 here for a ticket? I mean, you still got to get there.
Sure.
But we made it happen, and I got to be front row for ECW One Night Stand. I've managed to email Jeremy Borash and figure out that he was the guy helping put together Hardcore Homecoming. Got to be front row for that, and that is my favorite wrestling memory until All In the first Starrcast. It was like, what a great weekend this was, where I got closure. I got to feel it one last time. We talk a lot on my podcast about star ratings and buy rates and just, you know, the television ratings and the gates and the merchandise. But as a wrestling fan, man, none of that really matters. At the end of the day, what we're all sort of chasing in this bubble, everybody watching this, is the way wrestling made us feel when we were a kid. And that's what I wanted to do is bring that same feeling that I got at the Hammerstein Ballroom and at the old ECW Arena in 2005. Can we do that for fans who grew up maybe a few years before me, but man, 84, 85, 86, that was their time. And I think it's a really cool thing to do. I had such a great time interviewing Mr. Jim Crockett for our conversations with Conrad Peace on adfreeshows.com.
Right.
And we spent all of last year with Tony Schiavone on his What Happened When podcast, just episodically going through the year 1986. So I have been thinking about Jim Crockett Promotions nonstop for 2 days or 2 years. And I, through the course of all that, got to be pretty good friends with David Crockett. And I pitched an idea, hey, what if? And to my surprise, he was more excited about the idea than I was. So here we go. One last time, Ric Flair's last match, Jim Crockett Promotions, 6:05 on a Sunday. Come on, that's going to be awesome.
Well, and just to circle back right here, yeah, the SummerSlam 92 stuff is really cool. I think the reason people get you, and I think Kenny's the version of you, is you guys have the same accent. So I think
there you go. Same. There you go.
That's the tie it is there. Dude, that was like, by the way, SummerSlam 92, like that may have been one of my early wrestling intros, because we had Take One Video, which was like our small town blockbuster. And like, I distinctly remember the cover art and the vibe of like Wembley and stuff, and like how big it felt. We were a real little kid. It just feels even bigger, you know?
Yes, absolutely. And we get to celebrate that with Brett. And man, you know, from my podcast, I just love nostalgia. And so we're leveraging nostalgia. Yes, we are going to have some current stars, and we got some other big plans coming. But to me, the pillars of this thing are the roast of Ric Flair, the Horseman panel, which we haven't even mentioned yet, Bret Hart 30 years later talking about SummerSlam 92, and then Jim Crockett Promotions, man. What a fun way to end the weekend.
Well, let's talk about Rick here. Yeah, a couple questions, obviously hit up the team. So like with Rick being come back, there's a lot of love. There's also some controversy. Cruz out there trying to get this thing shut down, right? Thinks Rick might be very seriously injured, if not worse, if he's to participate in a pro wrestling match. What's your response to him and to other fans that seem to be genuinely concerned about Ric Flair's well-being getting into a wrestling ring?
I know that Rick, if he was asked this question, would probably be combative, but I understand it comes from a good place. I mean, it comes from a place of concern and love. I mean, everybody wants to see, our favorite legends and heroes live forever and do what they love forever. And, we all have different ideas about what that is. But at the end of the day, this is Rick's decision. And more importantly than that, he is my father-in-law. So we've had a lot of conversations about that. He's been cleared by his doctor. He's good to go. He's been training at a high level for a long time. He's really, really proud of his cardio. And we actually recorded his podcast earlier today, and he bragged about how many squats he can do and how long, and, how much he can do on the rowing machine. And he went through a whole battery of tests and got a rating and the doctor said, you're good to go. So if his doctor approves and Rick approves and it's something Rick wants to do, I feel like we go with that rather than, no offense, a commentator he probably hasn't talked to in 30 years. And I'm not upset that Mr. Cruz has concerns. I know that there's a whole contingent of internet fans who don't like Mr. Cruz, but if he's trying to make wrestling a better, safer place and take care of those folks that we grew up watching and loving, I think that's great. But at the same time, I think he probably doesn't have all the information. And even now, there's a lot of speculation. He's going to wrestle this guy, and they're going to go 60 minutes, and it's going to be a hard-hitting match. Guys, it's going to be fun, okay? We're going to have fun, but I don't think anybody should tune in and expect to see it's going to be Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 12. That's not going to happen. So this is going to be a nostalgia show and a fun show, and the type of shows you would see if, you went to a random card and Jerry Lawler was wrestling in the main event. You're not going to see the Lawler from 81 in 2022, and nobody wants to see it. We're just happy he's here and he's got that crown and he's working, and we're going to see a lot of that. It's going to be fun, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Has Jerry's style really changed that much? Has it?
If you go back and watch some of that other stuff, man, I think you could make an argument in like 81, 82, 83. He may have been one of the best in the world.
I'm largely just poking at Jerry. So with the match though, you talk about how this could be fun, right? Yeah. The word on the street was that Ricky Steamboat was going to come out of retirement, team with Rock and Roll Express against Rick and FTR. Ricky since come out to let everybody know he declined the offer to have this match. What happened there? How deep did you get into talks with Ricky? From your side, what was that story like?
Nick, there's no way for me to have that conversation with you and not be negative or hurtful or rude or I'm not gonna comment on it, because I think a lot of Mr. Steamboat and hold him in high regard, and I know what really happened, and he knows what really happened, and I'm disappointed that he put a statement out before we had an opportunity to put a bow on things, but that's not the whole story, and what the whole story is really nobody's business, I suppose. But I appreciate his body of work very much, and am always going to be a fan of his, but I'm not going to get into a he said, she said mudslinging situation when it's someone that I know, like, and trust and respect a great deal.
Fair enough. And so do you have any idea of who will be teaming with the Rock and Roll Express now to take on Ric Flair and FTR at Starrcast?
I've never said FTR's in it. I've never said the Rock and Roll Express are in it. All we've announced is that that's Ric Flair's last match, and there's been lots of speculation, and lots of folks are rushing to have the scoop and make a post, and they're posting inaccurate stuff. And in an effort to try to break the news, they're making the news and they're changing the news, and that's disappointing. But the reality is Ric Flair has his last match. We have a 7-match card mapped out, and we haven't announced it yet. And the folks who have been contacted know that they've been contacted, and it is what it is. But we do have a plan. It is going to be a great show. It is not a 1-match event. I want to make sure everybody understands this is not a 1-match thing, but it is going to be Rick's last match. But it's going to be a full card. It's going to make you feel good. If you love wrestling and you love nostalgia, we're going to have the stars of today, and we're going to have some cameos from the stars of yesteryear. But the main event, sure thing, is going to be Ric Flair's last match. But I can't tell you all the details yet because it's just not time.
Okay, fair enough. Hey, you can't fault a guy for asking, right?
Sure,
like you said,
sure.
Right? Like you said, it's been all reported. It has been on the record. I thought I'd trick you into saying something here. You didn't fall for it. The other thing
I do want to say though, I'm not upset about the Ricky Steamboat thing. I know that sometimes when I said something the other day on Jeff Jarrett's podcast, and boy, it just got clickbaited everywhere. I just want to add the proper context here. Lots of conversations have happened about what if, and we got everyone that we asked about it. Everyone said, "Yep, I'm in." And so we've had conversations, but ultimately, that's not the match you're going to see. But I've never said what the match was going to be. So when people are saying, "What's the match now?" Well, what was it ever? I mean, we've had a lot of hypotheticals. So, we could say hypothetically right now, next year's WrestleMania is The Rock versus Roman. Everyone said that hypothetically, but when does WWE announce that? When has Rock said that? So it's all just conjecture at this point, is my point.
Rock alluded to it in Young Rock. He made a reference to it. He stirred the pot there. He knew what he was doing.
Sure.
I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now. The other thing I wanted to bring up here with Rick is obviously this is like his most high profile pro wrestling thing since the fallout from Dark Side of the Ring. Some fans are upset that Rick is, making this comeback in light of how he was portrayed in that episode. Would you like to say anything to the fans out there that are maybe more coy on Rick returning to the world of professional wrestling right now?
No, I totally understand. I mean, I'm a big fan of Dark Side of the Ring and all that they do. And I think a lot of the folks who put it together, and we've worked together a lot, and on their new projects, I've been helpful behind the scenes on that and sort of helping connect the dots. And I think they're creating great content, but I also know that the story they talked about is a story that was 20 years old. They got one side of the story. They didn't get two. And I don't know that was necessarily new information for folks who kept up with the news back then, but I would say that I don't know that the phrase comeback is really accurate. I mean, he had a Car Shield commercial airing the next week. I mean, he's been making public appearances ever since. His dance card is full on the autograph circuit. He shot multiple television commercials since, including just one a couple of days ago. So this whole comeback narrative, I'm not saying this to be dismissive, but do you know how many wrestling fans there are in the world and how many Ric Flair fans there are in the world? And do you know how few of them watch Dark Side? Like, in the scheme of things, this is an inside the bubble thing. And that I'm not dismissing any of the allegations or what was said or any of that. I wasn't there. I don't know. But what I do know is pop culture is still celebrating Ric Flair and never stopped. Now, some wrestling fans may have said, "Well, I don't like that behavior and all of that." And I certainly get it. And I'm respectful of that, but I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. A lot of other folks don't know what happened. And, all this has been covered is my point. It's not necessarily new information, but if you're a fan of Ric Flair, you've probably had to reconcile in your mind that, "Oh, I wish you wouldn't have did that," or "I wish you wouldn't have said this." And you've forgiven Rick for probably multiple things in the past. And that's what's going to make the roast fun. And it's what is the charm of the Nature Boy. To know the Nature Boy is to love him. And I think a lot of folks still do, which is clear to me based on the reception we got when we announced on Monday that he was having his last match. I mean, it went super viral. It was everywhere in every media outlet. So the idea that there's not an interest in what he does anymore is not true. But I certainly understand that in certain wrestling circles, they don't like Rick. And I get that. I understand. And I respect that. I really do.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just want to get your take on it. And my follow-up is obviously, what's your relationship now with Dark Side of the Ring? But it sounds like you guys are still working together in some capacity, and that the relationship will continue on. Yeah,
we've always been polite and friendly, and always will be. I mean, I don't know that I can spill the beans on what they're working now. I know a lot of folks.
I was trying to get that one too, but okay, fine.
I know a lot of folks have speculated what it is, but I know what it is and who they're talking to. And a lot of the reason I know some of that is they would say, "Hey man, can you help us get a hold of so-and-so?" And it just so happens I usually can. So I've been very helpful and will always continue to support the project. And, I wish in hindsight that could have been handled a little differently, but it kind of is what it is now.
All right. Well, I asked my writers, if they had questions for you, and I got some pretty good ones back. Some of the stuff I've asked you was on that list. This next one though, was about Bischoff and the jabs at Tony Khan and Punk, or what I guess Eric would call astute observations, or whatever he would like to say, but the things that rile people up. And it seems like it's been at a pretty consistent clip as of late, especially as somebody who can tell you aggregates this kind of content. What's it like to kind of be in the middle of that? Like, it seems like between Punk and Tony Khan, Tony less these days, but Punk, man, he really seemed to want to drop a nuke on Eric this past week.
No, and I understand. I mean, I get why he would be frustrated. I mean, Eric's had some pretty pointed comments that I feel like were off base. If Now, Eric is only looking at one metric. Eric, you have to remember he worked for WCW, and a lot of people would say, yeah, on Turner. No, owned by Turner. There is a difference. And so he worked for a television company. So television ratings were paramount for him. Tony Khan does not work for that opportunity is not Turner owned. That's Tony Khan's situation. And Tony Khan knows how to run a business. So you take a look at buy rates, you take a look at the knowledge that we have that the buy rates are up and that buildings are selling out. And that Punk set an all-time pro wrestling tees record in a freaking day. Like, those are not metrics that we should ignore if we're talking about what someone's investment has been worth. Now, I get that you could have a separate conversation about but the ratings, but that doesn't tell the whole story, Nick. And I mean this sincerely. WWE's ratings were not record last year, but the revenue was, and their profit was. So a lot of wrestling fans think things just sort of start and end with the rating, and that's not accurate. What matters most to a company, not the television station, but a company, is how much are we making for our TV? Tony and them apparently have a deal that they're really proud of. It's servicing their audience well enough for them to set merchandise records, sell more pay-per-views than ever, and sell out buildings. So for him to say that, well, this is the worst investment, wait, based on what? They don't get paid based on ratings. I don't know that wrestling fans know that, but the reality is Tony Khan doesn't, I don't know this, but I would imagine he doesn't get a bonus if he hits a certain number. Now, would that potentially mean that he's going to have more leverage in the next television contract? Sure. But in the meantime, before that happens, he makes money by selling pay-per-views and merchandise and tickets, and they're crushing right there. So all the other metrics are solid, and it feels like Eric just picks the one. And I don't know if, just honestly, Nick, I don't know if he does that just because he thinks it's fun to poke the bear and create some controversy. And I straight up asked him that this week on the show, and he said no. And I clarified that a lot of the things he says he knows, really, it's just what we've heard. He's not actually been privy to any of the inside financials and details. And why would he be? That's their private business. So it's a tough thing to sort of balance, but that's also the spirit of our show. All of my podcasts are sort of like, here's what the smart marks believe based on what they read in the newsletter. And now here's what really happened. Now that really happened is based on what the host says, whether that's Bruce or Eric or Tony or whatever. And then the other piece of that is, well, what did Dave or Wade or Mike Johnson or yourself or whoever say happened? And then the truth is somewhere in the middle, and that's up for the audience to figure out. And I have my stance on AEW and he has his, and I don't know that we'll ever see eye to eye on it, but that's okay. That's what makes the show fun.
I don't think I've ever reported anything wrong. I'll be honest. Maybe aggregated wrong, but all my scoops have been pretty on spot. I don't do them that often, though. I only do them if I know they're right. Are you going to co-host Undertaker's Rumored Podcast?
That's a great question.
No answer? You don't want to, you just want to, it's just a great question? Fair enough.
Great question.
It's a great question.
I would be lying if I said that I don't hold the Undertaker in high regard, and I don't think that would be a really fun opportunity. But I can clearly, concisely say I've not signed a sheet of paper saying I'm going to do that.
Okay.
But boy, I sure do love to hear the rumors of there being some new podcasts coming down the pike. And I sure do love the idea of doing something with the Undertaker, because what a legend, and the amount of stories he must have would be incredible. So it's a treasure trove of stories, but as I'm talking to you now, no, I'm not hosting the podcast.
Okay, fair enough. Last one here. It's not really like we'll circle back to the Starrcast stuff. Now you said it. You did All In Weekend because you had a couple buddies over there. One of them you name dropped was Cody. Now Cody's back with WWE now, and you're going to be talking about this period of time on your podcast for decades to come. I have no doubt about that. Is Cody going to be coming to Starrcast? He going to pop in? He going to say hi? I know you said no to everybody else, but I mean Cody's special case. They gave him a media scrum during Mania Week.
Just so you know, if Cody wants to stop by, Cody's going to stop by. Nobody gets to tell Cody what to do. But I don't know if he put this together yet, but he's probably going to be on SmackDown if I had to guess. And I know he's a Raw guy, but it's the go home edition, so it wouldn't surprise me to see him on SmackDown on Friday night. Well, that's in Atlanta. I'll be in Nashville with Starrcast. And then on Saturday, I'd imagine he'd be in that stadium doing something if I were guessing. So I think his dance card's pretty full. So the answer is no. I don't think scheduling wise it works out.
You're implying that he would be on SmackDown to promote something for SummerSlam that would hypothetically involve him doing something with somebody you would think then on SmackDown, which is not Seth Rollins.
Well, I don't know what he's going to do at SummerSlam, but here's what I know. I hope that Cody Rhodes holds up a championship over his head sooner rather than later. And it would tickle me if that happened SummerSlam weekend. If Ric Flair had his last match on Sunday and Dusty Rhodes' son won the world title the night before, that'd be pretty badass. I don't know that that's going to happen. Nobody's told me that's going to happen. But as a Cody Rhodes fan, man, I'm pulling for that. I don't know how we get there, but we got a little time to get there.
Not hard. Wins the Money in the Bank after Hell in a Cell, calls out Roman Reigns the next night on Raw, and then you just go from there, right? Like, it's not that complicated, Conrad.
But if that happens, how badass would that be?
Yeah, dude, I mean, it's not hard to connect these dots on the wall. I've been telling people Cody's like in Game Genie mode right now, where it's like, how many things can he do in a 12-month period in WWE? He might be King of the Ring by the time WrestleMania comes around. I'm not sure, you know?
I mean, honestly, it's like Kurt Angle's first year, right? Kurt Angle did it all. He checked all the boxes: European, Intercontinental, King of the Ring, World Champ. If Cody can do that, man, what a hell of a run. But to answer your question, no, Cody Rhodes is not going to be at Starrcast. I wish he could be there, but realistically, if you were Vince McMahon and he's the new golden boy, would you let him go to a non-WWE appearance? I don't think
I would for all the reasons he's letting him do everything else, you know? Like, look, again, he did the media scrum WWE weekend. That was something that had not ever in my time covering WWE really been done. It felt like an AEW scrum run by Adam Hopkins, much love to Adam. And I'm not against it, right? Like, there's an element of realism that AEW really honed in on, or continues to hone in on. And I think carrying that like a cape around Cody into WWE, almost like Trojan horse-esque, works for him. Yeah, let him do Starrcast, right? That, like, if they'd have given Punk the same kind of leniency, you probably could have told a little bit better stories. And he already told some pretty good ones. But, you know, there was that opening there where you could have told some really great CM Punk stories if they'd have just put their trust in him, you know?
Well, I think it goes without saying, you know, he's always welcome at all of our events. You know, he is a real life friend of mine and we still communicate, and I think the world of him and his family. And I mean, even his mom, I just love his mom. And yeah, I'm friendly with them and they're always welcome. But if I was a betting man, I would bet the house that no, he will not be at Starrcast. He's going to be busy, man. Come on.
I don't know, man. I think he's going to have Friday night off. I don't think he'll have anything to do with Friday Night SmackDown. I think he's going to be at Starrcast, maybe probably hanging out with Bret Hart, talking SummerSlam 92.
Well, okay, listen, that would be cool, but that's happening on Saturday, and I'm pretty sure he'll be stretching out and getting ready to win the world title that night. I hope so.
I don't know. I didn't even look at this guy. I don't know. So anyway, Conrad, this was a lot of fun. I always enjoy talking with you, man. I'm very excited about the return of Starrcast. I'll be around that weekend, so we'll be getting coverage of that, and I look forward to seeing everything that's going on. Anything you want to take us home with here today? Anything in particular? Plugs, promotions, anything like that?
Bracelets go on sale this Friday. Don't forget it's Starrcast. It's a little different from all the other conventions. We've got a whole bunch of panel shows. And when you buy a bracelet, you get access to all of those shows, a guaranteed seat, plus access to all the meet and greets and the roast of Ric Flair. And if you want to see Ric Flair's last match, those tickets go on sale next Friday on the 27th. So make plans to join us in Nashville. The 29th, we kick things off with the roast. And on Sunday, it's Ric Flair's last match. And here's another spoiler for you, Nick.
Oh, please bring it.
There will be other matches.
Yeah, I figured as much. I was gonna bring it up earlier, but I was like, he ain't gonna tell you even if he wanted, even if he asked. But I assumed as much.
The plan is that there's not just going to be one wrestling show next to Starrcast. There will be others. So,
wait, so there's going to be more than just the Jim Crockett Promotions show. You're saying we can maybe anticipate other wrestling shows at Starrcast? Is that what you're implying?
It's a true blue destination. One of the caveats when I was doing things for Cody and the Young Bucks with Starrcast was no other wrestling. You know, what we're doing has to be paramount. Well, I don't have that partnership anymore. So because I don't have that understanding anymore, there's going to be a lot of wrestling there that weekend. And I hope fans make plans to come see us, because this will be a one-stop shop. You'll get to see wrestling every night or every day and have all the panels and the meet and greets and send them home happy.
So I know we're trying to wrap this here, but you're not going to be able to answer this question for me, I think, anyway. But I've wondered for a while how long it was going to take for you to become some kind of promoter. Looks like this is your first really kind of dalliance into that. But you're also describing something that, and I don't know all the details, sounds kind of akin to like a GCW collective type deal where you're not necessarily promoting so much as providing the space. Do you see yourself as wearing the promoter hat here a bit come Starrcast weekend, or do you not feel comfortable taking on that moniker yet?
I think just the function of me being involved with putting together the Jim Crockett Promotions card, a lot of people are going to paint me as that, but in my mind's eye, the card sort of writes itself. And obviously, we're leaning heavily on Mr. Crockett and a few other folks who know a thing or two about wrestling. Double J comes to mind. Anyway, I don't think you have to worry about me being a wrestling promoter. I'm not starting my own promotion. Yeah, I know this is old, but this
I'm
is
not worried about it. I'm not gonna. If you want to do it, I don't care, man. It's more news for me to cover. I'm just saying, like, I'm interested. I've wondered with your resources and Rolodex how long it was going to take for something like this to happen, Conrad.
It's happening Sunday, July 31st, but it's a one-off. I mean, Jim Crockett Promotions, just like One Night Stand and ECW. Now, I know they did another one in 06, but man, wouldn't it have been cool in hindsight if they just let it go in 05 and that was
No way this is your last time promoting, or quote unquote not promoting but promoting. No way, Conrad. I can't envision that. I don't believe it.
All right, I know you can't see my right hand. There it is. I promise I have no plans to promote.
Well, whether or not you have plans to promote, that's some carny gibberish right there, Conrad.
No, I mean, you have no idea the stress and pressure it is to deal with all of these delicate personalities for dozens of individuals, and you've got to. And by the way, I'm doing. I don't even know how many podcasts, but it's a lot.
It's a lot, dude.
And now I'm doing a convention again. And now there's a big roast that's going to be on regular pay-per-view. Like the roast of Ric Flair. Yeah, it's on Fight, but it's on traditional pay-per-view too, with celebrities that I have to cater to. And then there's 2 days of the convention and then a wrestling show. And oh, by the way, I still do mortgages. That's my full-time job. So there's no chance that I have the bandwidth or capacity or whatever the buzzword is. I just don't have the time. So it's a nice idea. It's fun, but I'm one and done, Nick. I'm too fat for all this stress, baby.